What if I told you that the organ inside your head isn't actually fixed? That it's constantly changing and rewiring itself every single moment of your life? Well, today, we're going to explore exactly how your brain does that and, more importantly, how you can actually take control of the process. Let's get into it.
I mean, these are questions that have fascinated people for centuries, right? For the longest time, the brain was just this total black box. But what we've discovered pretty recently completely flips our understanding of what's possible.
Okay, so before we can get to the really groundbreaking science, we have to clear the air a bit. Let's start by busting some of the biggest myths about the brain that, honestly, a lot of us probably grew up believing.
For such a long time, the main idea was that our brains were static, that they just kind of locked in place after childhood. And of course, we've all heard that myth that we only use 10% of it. Well, modern science has proven that is completely wrong. The reality is so much more dynamic. Your brain is an active organ that literally changes throughout your entire life. Even when you're just sitting there, resting, your brain is just buzzing with activity.
All of these new discoveries were pointing towards one single, incredibly important idea, a discovery that revealed the brain's true superpower. And really, this is the key to our whole conversation today.
That superpower is called neuroplasticity. Now, it sounds complex, I know, but the idea is actually really simple. It just means your brain is like plastic. It can be molded, it can be reshaped. Its neurons and their connections are constantly changing, not just over years, but every single day, every hour, and every second.
And here's the most powerful part of all this. This whole process, it's not something that just happens to you. You can actively direct it. You are in the driver's seat of your own brain's development, and that is just an incredibly empowering thought.
So how does this actually work? You know, when you decide you're going to learn a new skill or absorb some new information, what is physically happening inside your head? Let's break down the 3 fundamental stages of how your brain really rewires itself.
So, learning triggers 3 types of neuroplasticity. First, it kicks off with a short-term chemical change. Then it moves to a more permanent structural change. And finally, it can even lead to a functional change, where the brain starts reassigning its resources. Let's take a look at each one.
The first stage is all chemical. Think about learning to play the guitar. The first few days you practice, you feel like you've totally got it. That's your brain flooding the connections between your neurons with chemical signals, giving you a temporary boost. But then, you take a couple of days off, and suddenly it feels like you've lost all your progress. That's because this chemical change is only short-term.
So here is a really key mindset shift. That feeling of struggling when you're learning something new, that's not a sign of failure. It's actually the complete opposite. It's a positive signal that your brain is working hard, trying to build a stronger, more permanent connection. It's actually a necessary step.
And that struggle is what leads us to stage 2, structural change. This is where the real magic of long-term learning happens. With repeated practice, your brain moves beyond those temporary chemical signals and starts to physically alter its own wiring, strengthening the circuits that you use the most.
And hey, this isn't just a theory, we can actually see it. Studies have found that London taxi drivers, who have to memorize thousands of streets, developed larger brain regions related to spatial mapping. Jugglers show actual growth in the areas for perceiving visual motion. And Braille readers have expanded sensory regions for touch in their hands. Your brain physically adapts to whatever you ask it to do.
And finally, there's functional change. Think of this as your brain becoming a master project manager. It can actually reassign tasks to different regions to become more efficient, sometimes recruiting areas that are rarely used just to help out. It's the brain optimizing its own performance as you master a skill.
So we've seen the how, but now let's talk about the who. And the who is you. You are the architect of your own brain, which means your mindset is the most important tool that you have.
Because here's a pretty stunning fact. When it comes to success in almost any field, research suggests that 80% of it is psychological. It's all about your mindset. Only 20% is the actual mechanics or the physical work. You get your mindset right, and the hard work becomes infinitely easier.
And this really gets to the core of it all. Whether you build your brain up or you just let it stagnate, it is entirely up to you. The thoughts you have, the skills you practice, your choices are what make all the difference. So this brings us to the future. Your future. With this knowledge, what happens now? What does this mean for you? Right this second.
So what's the proof? It's this. Your brain right now is physically different than it was just a few minutes ago. The very act of watching this and thinking about these ideas has forged new connections. Neuroplasticity isn't some event in the future. It is happening right now.
So I'll leave you with this one question. Knowing that you are the architect of your own mind, what is the next step you are going to consciously take to shape your brain? The power is in your hands. Thanks for joining me for this.